Okay. Recently, both in my writing practice and as I teach, I've been interested in very simple computer programs that engage with language. Today, I'll be sharing 15 non-interactive text generators that each do the same essential thing. They affirm by producing language that says yes. We have heard and will hear more discussion about how important it is that at least some of us who study digital media, if not all of us, be able to read and understand code. There are analogies to learning human languages that suggests that we should learn how to write code as well. I think the literacy metaphor, the connection between human language and programming language, is actually quite overrated. Nevertheless, programming ability is very valuable for digital media scholars. We don't learn to read mathematical proofs without constructing proofs ourselves. And scholars of printing learn a great deal by composing and setting type themselves. However widely accepted software studies is today, with a book of that title out from MIT Press, Ars Electronica, and SLSA events on code recently, it's certainly gaining acceptance. It's also quite more widely recognized now that programming is not just a detail, it's a foundation of creative computing. Leaving aside for now the issue of the programming language to be used, what program shall we, as scholars and students of digital media, write? First-person shooters, enterprise solutions, file systems, Fibonacci and prime number generators, Celsius to Fahrenheit converters, hello world. If our interest is in how language and computing intersect, and that's where my interest is, it makes sense to start with programs that generate language. Specifically, why not write programs that engage language in an interesting way, going beyond hello world, which Mark Marino and I both like very much, but still keeping that program very simple. Instead of printing a fixed phrase, it's possible to have the computer pick one of several options. That's one thing the computer can do easily, perhaps naturally, the way that Burroughs and Geisson's scissors could naturally cut up a text on a sheet of paper. These generators or voices produce sentences based on random numbers, numbers as random as the computer can provide. This compels the author of a voice to write in a different way, writing not a sentence or a sequence of sentences, but a distribution over sentences. In these simple examples, each sentence that is shown is drawn independently from a distribution. A more advanced exercise would involve conditioning the current sentence on the last sentence or the last few, allowing progression or regression, and perhaps connecting to Beckett's use of repetitive language even more strongly. But I find that even sentences generated independently at random, placed one after another, can still be enough to scaffold the imagination and allow us to envision a character, a scenario, without being particularly lyrical in what we've composed, without progression, without explicitly setting the scene, without implotment. It's possible to create a non-random language generator, for instance, one that uses the time as input and acts as a sort of clock, as seen here. Another non-interactive deterministic program might generate language based on the contents of a directory, or a text file, or a URL. Of course, the manipulation of language is not the only possibility. The more retinally inclined beginning digital media programmer could write code to manipulate images, implementing different sorts of transformations, color adjustments, and filtering. And sound is fair game too. I've worked with text, and I've also chosen to write these voices in Python, a language that I like and that I think is suitable for those in the humanities. These generators could have been written in something else, though: JavaScript, Perl, Pascal, or even Microsoft Basic from the good old days. Programming is a general skill, but the particular language, which functions as part of the platform, does have its influence on how a program can be created, revised, shared, and discussed. Whether a language is provided by default, as Python is on the Mac, is another important platform-level issue. I see that learning to program and concern about the code level is distinct from consideration of the lowest level of platform, which Ian Bogost has already discussed. The understanding of digital media requires that we understand the software that makes up platforms, basic interpreters, Java runtimes, and the software that makes up artworks and other creative programs written on those platforms. At the platform level, we could discuss why it might be harder to write a program like this on a Windows Vista machine than a Commodore 64. We could discuss what might make Python better than BASIC for projects like this today, technically and in terms of embedding these languages in society. At the code level, we could consider why I made specific choices that I did, given that Python allows variables to be named arbitrarily, and for things to be done in several different ways. These levels are adjacent and strongly related, but it's still possible to focus on one or the other. These voices are simple, but in my experience, very useful investigations into what the computer can do with language. I invite you to take a look at the program here and on your own. It's available for download from nicm.com, and I'm going to post about it very soon on grandtextauto.org. You can modify it or write one of your own programs to create your own voice. Generating sentences independently at random is a legitimate capability of the computer, but hardly the only one. Before we even consider complex operations such as parsing, it's worth remembering that the computer can sort, reverse, and transform according to rules as easily as scissors can cut paper. Writing a text generator of a few lines is experimental in the sense that Burroughs used the term. It is something to do, something I think offers insight into computing and language. So I suggest to everyone who has tried running with scissors, try executing with a computer and see what code can do to language.